The reason that you're not impacting anyone is simple. You're not producing anything. You're not doing enough. You're lazy. And as hard as this is to say, you don't want it enough. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. In today's conversation, we're going to be talking about something that may ruffle some feathers and may make you feel bad. But the goal of this podcast is to help you ultimately create an ecosystem of academic excellence. So through these inspiring conversations, these practical strategies and actionable insights, we empower educators, leaders, and change makers just like yourself to foster trust, collaboration, and an academic excellence that allows you to provide the resources that you need to succeed, not only as an educator in the classroom, but to empower your communities much, much further than they're currently empowered. Look, I'm just going to keep it real with you. My life has been a series of ups and downs, and I'm sure yours has as well. You start things, you really get invested and motivated, and you go full-fledged into them. And if you're anything like me, once you get a piece of success, you feel like it's time to now start something else. But true impact happens when you're able to create something that's mastered. And mastery can't happen without doing things. Mastery can't happen if you don't understand what mastery is. To me, mastery is a new definition that I've heard recently, is being able to do something repeatable without conscious effort and resources. Being able to do something repeatedly without the conscious effort of resources or just effort in general. This conversation today is about one thing. It's about the reason that you're not driving impact. And the truth behind the reason that you're not driving impact is because you just simply don't do enough. And if you're not doing enough, it doesn't require you to learn enough. And if you're not learning anything, you can't grow. And if you're not growing, you can't really solve the problems that you were called to solve. One of the things that I want you to understand, and this is a personal story of mine, as a director of school culture and student advancement at a charter school based in North Carolina, I was driving success. We had built a very sustainable and successful service learning program. We had community partners events on a monthly basis. And what those community partners events were is where I would engage with various small business owners, corporate leaders, or nonprofit executives in the community around us in the city of Charlotte. And I would invite those individuals to come in to tour our school, hear about our great programming, and invite them to either allow our students to intern, invite them to have speaking engagements at our school, or to do various things, a multitude of opportunities where our students would engage with the nonprofits from a volunteering standpoint. So all of these various opportunities. So I had community partners going on. I was managing a group of parents that had roughly 250 parents in this community group. And on top of that, we were having bi-monthly, speaker series where we were featuring different industries, whether it's finance and banking, technology, government and law, STEM and technology, all of these various fields. And we would bring professionals in from these various industries. And what that would allow us to do is expose our students to the multitude of opportunities, ask them questions, engage with business professionals, understand how to have these types of conversations. But ultimately what it would do is it would allow us to be more marketable. Many of the conversations that I've had on the Contagious Culture podcast is how can you position not only yourself as a leader, but also your school and your institution as a thought leader where it's marketable and it's showing that it's proven itself when we're trying to mobilize resources in our community. And I was doing that. On top of that, I was managing internal cultural divides between leaders and navigating those political and bureaucratic relationships between the board members and our charter management organization in the school, facilitating conversations with parents, and all of these various hats that I was doing. But the truth of the matter is that all of that on the surface looked great, but there were personal things happening in my life that hindered my ability to be able to show up in the best way possible. At that time, on the back end of that role, we launched the Contagious Culture podcast. We launched the Contagious Culture, creating an ecosystem of academic excellence. I was flying to speak at schools and visit with other institutions to tell them this model. And it motivated me to understand one thing. And this is the driving force of this conversation that we're going to have today. The one thing is that people don't drive impact because they simply are not producing. And if you want to be committed to a life where you are really driving impact in your school community, in your local community, in your organization, on your team, you have to focus on producing more. Now, what I was mentioning earlier when I was sharing the multitude of hats that I was committed to wearing, not all of those hats I was required to wear. And oftentimes when we want to do more, the want becomes a distraction from the things that we need to do. And rather than going deep in the work and driving impact deeper, we focus on putting on more hats to be seen, or to be seen doing more, rather than creating more opportunities for other people to succeed. It's clear that months later, I realized this even deeper because, I was at that time producing one podcast episode a week. The goal was to have 52 podcasts launched in the year of 2025. So we were launching podcasts on a weekly basis, had a videographer and all of these amazing things. But what I realized is that idea of perfection paralyzed my ability to truly be able to make an impact and be progressive. So weekly episodes felt daunting. It felt inconvenient. It felt like a lot of work. And what I realized, and it took me months to realize this, is that I simply just didn't want it enough. I simply was too distracted by the things that I wanted, the desires of flesh, the desires to be seen, the desires to be seen doing more, where I was not committed to impact. I was committed to visibility. And if we're driving this work in wanting to be more impactful, it requires us to sometimes remove ourselves from the public so that we can focus on the private data, measurables, metrics that are important for us to be able to create success as an institution or as educational leaders. So what inspired this conversation today is, in part, we've been able to, I had an opportunity of traveling to work with Amazon in Arlington City, Virginia, or Crystal City, Virginia. And in that week that I was there, visiting with my mother, my son had the opportunity to be in summer camp while we were there. That week, the 5 days that we were there, we were able to successfully record 22 podcast episodes. 22 in 5 days. And like I shared with you earlier, my goal was to produce 52 in the year, and we produced 22 in 5 days. That one realization transformed the whole way that I approach not just how I operate professionally, but how I operate personally. And this is the one piece of information that I wanted to share with you all today, and why I felt led to record this episode. how bad do you want to drive an impact? And if it feels hard for you to do the work that you're doing, you have to ask yourself two questions. One, is this the work that I'm supposed to be doing? And two, if it's this hard, why? And as I recognize and as I reflected on those two questions, it was hard before because I had so many other distractions around me that were clouding my ability to show up authentically, vulnerably, and with authenticity and transparency. What this did when I'm not able to show up in the way that I was supposed to show up, you show up with a mask on. And it becomes then a job. And when it becomes a job, now you're acting on stage like a script and you're not authentically being yourself. Because the same time that it took me to record 20 to 25-minute episodes once a week, and it felt exhausting, was the same time that it took me to create 22 episodes, 20 to 25 minutes a week, or 20 to 25-minute episodes, and it felt empowering. And it's not that I just had more time or I removed various things, but I decluttered my mind so that I could be able to produce more for the people that I was destined to produce for. Your distractions are leaving you in a place where you're not able to produce more for the people that you're focused on producing for. What I learned in this is production requires intensity, focus, alignment. It requires us to be so connected and committed to our why, but then also committed to understanding what it is that we're talking about, that we just feel the need to be able to share it with as many people as that we can talk to it about. What it's also, though, shown me in this process of production is you cannot make an impact, true impact, deep impact. You could show up on social media, you can create content, you can do those things, but real impact requires production because of this. After we produced the 22 episodes in that week, the one question that I asked myself is, now what are we going to talk about? Because I felt so inspired to share all of this knowledge and all of these experiences and go back into Canva and look at various presentations that I've done and do it, and then go back in conversations and do it. And I shared all of my information. And then it's like, now what? So what that showed me is production requires me to do one thing, and that's go learn some more. Go get some more. Go do some more. Because now that I've created more, it's now required me to become more so that I can learn more, so that I can continue to do what? Give more. If you want to be impactful, if you are committed to service, if you are committed to giving, then you can't give from an empty place. If someone comes to you and asks for fruit from your tree that you have never planted the seed for, then you are doing them a disservice. If your teachers or team comes to you and is asking for advice, encouragement, strategic oversight, ways to be operationally more effective, and you don't have anything to offer besides old things that you've given, besides recommending a book to them, then you have done your team a disservice. So in order for me to be great, I have to produce, and I have to produce to the point of exhaustion, so that it requires me as a leader to go off and fill my tank back up. It requires me as a leader to go back in prayer. It requires me as a leader to go back and fast. It requires me as a leader to go back and read. It requires me as a leader to go back and do and create more experiences. It requires me as a leader to go now learn and meet other people. It requires me as a leader to go get mentorship. It requires me as a leader to try new things. The one reason that you're not impacting enough is because you're not producing enough, because if you were producing enough, you would be forced to learn more. The one reason that our teachers are not producing to the level of excellence in the classroom is because they're not exhausted intellectually. They're exhausted operationally. So what can you do as a leader to help them operationally maximize their time, provide them resources so that you can be the leader to fill their cup up intellectually? So I ask you this one question today. How are we committed to not just producing more, but filling up our cup? Because there's a difference between being visible and being impactful. There's a difference between someone that comes on social media every single day or online every day or produces work every day that is repurposed, rather than the person that is committed to putting out new content or deeper content every single day. Yes, this podcast may be on every audio platform as well as online, but how are we showing up producing content for our staff members every single day? What is your daily nugget? What did you learn today or last night? What did you realize? What did you reflect on that required you to go teach it or learn more about it? As educators, as leaders, as change makers, we have to be committed to stewardship. And in order to be great stewards, it requires us to plant the seed, because we cannot produce fruit from a tree that we never planted the seed, and the seed is what we were called to do. But just planting the seed isn't enough. We have to water the seed, and watering the seed looks like books, looks like listening in to the Contagious Culture podcast, looks like going and getting mentorship. But not just watering the seed and not just mentorship, it requires you doing something. It requires you designing the environment around the seed so that when you plant it, when you water it, when you nurture it, it grows. It requires you not just having darkness around you, but where is the sunlight in your life? It is our requirement as educational leaders, as change makers, as mission-driven individuals to create opportunities to be more impactful. But remember that we cannot be impactful if we're not committed to production. And if we are consuming more than we are producing, then we cannot say that we are impacting the people that we were called to impact. Once we commit to productivity and production, now it requires us as leaders to go learn more. I want you to produce to the point of exhaustion this week. I want you to give your team everything that you have. I want you to give your team every single thing that you have so that it requires you to go learn some more. I remember as an athlete growing up, my father used to coach us in basketball, and he said, 40 minutes of hell. And when you come to practice, you're going to leave it all on the court. You're going to leave everything that you have on this court. So at the end, you can say that you gave it everything that you got, and then we're going to recover. We're going to pick ourselves up, and then we're going to come back in here and do it again tomorrow. So by the time it's game time, you can ensure that you are prepared. And I hated every day of practice. I hated every day of training. But then that same mentality grew for me to be a Division I athlete. And now when I'm training in track and I'm running and I'm running and I'm running, and you start to see the results because of your preparation. A lot of us want the rewards. A lot of us want the prize without the process. A lot of us want to commit to the start, but don't want to commit to the season of growth that we have to go through. We cannot have more until we humble ourselves and commit to becoming more. And as a leader, as someone that is committed to truly impacting people within your organization, within your community, it is important that you produce, that you learn, and that you commit to pushing yourself to exhaustion of giving so that it requires you to gain. What are you going to do this week that's different? What are you going to do that allows you to show that you actually are impactful? What books are you reading? What podcasts have you subscribed to? What people are you following? What coach have you hired? What thing have you done to ensure that that seed is not just planted, not just watered, not just nurtured, but is able to produce fruit so that when the team member comes, they are able to have their nourishment? My name is Kyle King. I'm the host of the Contagious Culture podcast, and we want to just thank you for joining in and tapping in with us. And I want you to ask yourself this week, what kind of culture am I spreading? Because culture is everywhere and is in everything. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.